What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's install is going to be very quick and easy. For those of you who I've seen in my personal life, you guys know that we did an aftermarket racing seat install on the G35. The car just got back and this is what it looks like now. But the issue that we ran into, and it's not really an issue per se, if you look down eye level with the car, you can see that one seat is higher than the other. That was completely on purpose. I bought two different size brackets. I bought one super low one for the driver's side, and I bought one regular height for the passenger because most passengers don't need to sit that low. Now, although I like the way it feels when you're driving, it is very difficult to see. Like, anybody who's not my size would struggle. So like, if I get in this car right now, driving isn't that difficult. But you can see, like, if I don't sit in like a perfect posture position, this steering wheel is actually above the line of my head. So if I'm driving, I have to sit perfectly upright to see what I'm doing. That being the case, what we're going to be doing today is switching out this super low bracket with a regular height bracket just to get a little bit more perspective when I'm driving normally. Now, if I'm racing or if I'm like throwing it through turns, being down here is really good because you don't have a bunch of side weight. But under normal driving circumstances, you want to be about this high so you're driving at a normal viewing perspective. So with this install, all we're doing is switching out the super low bracket with what is sitting right there, the normal height bracket. Now those brackets are from Planted and they are made specifically for my car. Only thing that you have to do is make sure that your racing seats or your sliders fit into one of the pre-cut slots. But other than that, you should have no problem with the install. So all you're gonna need for this install is the appropriate socket for disconnecting your bracket from the base of the car, which is here. And there'll be 4 bolts located, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. Make sure that when you take this out, you don't disconnect it completely in one shot. You want to break all of the bolts out and then readjust and work your way around. The reason why is if you take the front ones out, which a lot of people do, you then have a lot of trouble adjusting your seat to get access to the back bolts. So break them off, but don't remove them until you have all of them loose. So all I'm going to do is take this impact. Now, as far as the sizing goes, that's going to be dependent on your car, but I'm going to take this impact right here, put them on. I've already worked that one a little bit. This one here comes off pretty easily if I can get it on. Oh, I broke my own rule. But what I'll do is I'll actually just put that back in a little bit just so it stays steady. Next thing you do is you just unlock it a bit, slide the seat up. Oh, stuff in the back. But then you work the next 2 bolts that are located in the back. And of course, number 4. Now that they're all taken and they're loose, now you can work your way around, get all 4 bolts out. Come on out, come on out. All right, there's that one. Now you drop the seat back. That's what I was talking about before. You want to make sure you keep these in position so that you have access to making sure everything stays where it's going to be. Now I'm going to keep these in the position that I found them so that you make sure you're putting the right bolt back in the right place, because these are not all the same. Some of them have washers, other ones don't. But now from there, the bracket is disconnected from the floor and you just easily remove it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set this over here on the cardboard so I don't mess up the bracket. All right, so before I go and disconnect the racing seat from its original bracket, I'm just going to make sure that this lines up the way I want it to. That way I'm not, shooting myself in the foot from the beginning. All you do is push them where they're going to be, make sure all your holes are where they're supposed to be. That looks a lot better. Just flip it around just to make sure it doesn't go the other way. It does not. So, as you can see, like I said, Planted brackets are actually pre-cut for only your car. So like you couldn't buy this from me and put this on your 240. The only thing that's universal about a planted bracket is actually the holes that are cut out of the top. They're built to fit pretty much any slider or any racing seat application, but the bases of them are pre-welded and bent only for the car that you buy them for. All right, since these seats are basically brand new, I want to make sure I leave some cardboard here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this seat on its side. All you're going to need now that it's out of the car is you're going to need to remove the bolts that actually connect the bracket to the slider. Now remember, there's 3 pieces to your whole car seat assembly usually, at least 2. What some people will do is they'll go seat directly to bracket, and they'll eliminate that whole slider thing, but for those of us who do daily driving with our cars, you're going to want to have that slider just to have a little bit of adjustability. But all you're going to need to do at this stage is just disconnect the bracket at the bottom from the slider, which is technically in the middle. And you'll have different assemblies, but usually what will happen is you'll have either some type of bolt here or some type of Allen key setup. Mine has an Allen key. So again, what you're going to need is you're going to need the bolt to come off of here, and then there's an Allen key setup that's on this side here. Usually there'll be either a bolt or some type of locking mechanism, but most of the time you have a little Allen key that's going to go in there. But all you do from there is just lock it in place and break it off. And again, you don't want to get everything too broken, because you're going to end up having more issues than you're prepared for. All you want to do is get everything loosened up first. Now that it's all worked free, now I can take it off. But as I told you guys before, make sure you don't go with that whole disconnect stuff completely thing, because you'll end up shooting yourself in the foot. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this and take the slider and push the slider all the way to the front, because that'll give me access to the rear ones located here. Now the rear ones are usually the tricky ones, because the seat actually doesn't go all the way forward. So now that I've gotten a little bit more space there, I can work this in. But from there, again, rinse and repeat, get this thing broken off. All right, boy, come on off. There it is. And of course, number 4. Come on, boy. There we go. Not the most comfortable of positions, but again, once these are off, all you're going to do is do the process in reverse. Got it? So when you remove these bolts, one thing that I learned a long time ago that'll kind of save you guys a lot of trouble, don't take this screw out. If you take the screw out, you're going to have a bunch of wiggling around and trying to figure out how to get stuff back in. All you need to do is get these bottom bolts that lock it in place off, but leave the screw in where it is, so that you also have a reference point for when you go back to finish taking stuff out. So now this is going to be the tricky part, trying to get the slider to move without that in place. It's going to be a little trickier, but again, there we go. All I need to do now is just finish getting these ones off, and then when I go back and do it in reverse, I'll have less of a headache with the last half of that problem. So once they're off, again, make sure you leave these in place so that when you go to replace it with the opposite bracket or any aftermarket bracket, you're not trying to force these screws back into the place that you got them from. All right, last bolt's out, and there we go. All right, I lost 1 screw down here. Actually, I lost 2 screws, but the good news is they are gone but not forgotten. I can still have access to those. I just need to make sure these ones stay where they are supposed to be. All right, so before I throw this in, I just want to do a little side-by-side comparison. This is the absolute lowest seat bracket that you can get for a G35 or 350Z, and that's the one you just saw me sitting in. This is the height difference on the one that's going back in the car. Let me sit down on the floor. That's the one that's going in the car now. Now I can actually ride and drive like a normal human being. This is more race application. This is more daily driver. I'm not throwing this away because when I do decide to start tracking the other car that we're talking about building, then I'll still have that bracket for it. With that being said, let's throw this other one on. Now, when you mount this bracket, the planted sign goes on the front. Remember that, the planted sign goes on the front. Another way of making sure that you remember it is that this thing that sticks up here is meant for your seat belt. So whatever side your seat belt would be mounting to, meaning when you pull it across your chest, that is on the side. Felicia made that mistake and we had to do this twice. So don't learn from our mistakes. Don't do the things we did, do the things we say. But again, all I did was I left these bolts in place so that when I go to drop these in, oh, my seat is sitting on the floor. Can't be having that. I left those screws in place so that when I go to do it in reverse, everything is right where it needs to be. All right, am I in the right position? I am. Now, what I meant when I said having universal bases is, again, this is cut specifically for my car, but there are a couple slots that you can use depending on how big or small your slider is. My slider actually goes right into the, oh no, not that. My slider actually goes directly into the center sliding position here and there. That's one. Number two, don't you fall out, boy. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. There we go. Number two goes in right through that hole right there. Now the other two fell out, but that's not a big deal. Once I have it locked somewhat in position, then it'll be no problem getting the other stuff to stay where it needs to go. So that's how you do that one there. And again, we're just rinsing and repeating and doing it in reverse. Washer, bolt, put your finger back here just to keep it in place. Now again, I'm not locking these in place yet. I'm just putting them on enough that when I go, oh come on, there we go. That when I go to actually mount this in the right position completely, everything is right where it needs to be. So we dropped a couple of screws, which again, not a big deal. 1, 2. Do we have access to it? Yes, we do. And then we just throw that right up in there. Washer and bolt. And of course, number 3, which goes in the bottom here. Come back, come back, come back. There we go. But as you guys can see, this is happening pretty much in real time. I'm not running into any over-the-top issues. All right, so 30 seconds of wiggling that bolt free, and we finally got it out. But again, like I said at the very beginning, after that position right there, it's just do it in the opposite order. So I'm just taking these bolts, and again, remember, don't lock them completely in place yet, because you're going to need that wiggle room to make sure that everything lines up the way you want. As you guys can see, this bracket is not a hole, it's a slot. So what could end up happening is you could have the whole bracket twisted to the side and then you're driving your car sitting on an angle. That being the case, you want to make sure that you get all your stuff close to tight. And then once it's close to tight, then you square everything up and make sure that it's exactly the way you want it to sit. Then you finish the process. But as of right now, I'm just going to go around and almost lock these bolts in place. Again, emphasis on almost in place. So as you guys can see, like I was saying before, don't tighten it in all the way, because if you look, you can actually see that the space gets a little bigger going up towards the top. And it's not massive, but it's enough that it could throw you off. So now that I see that, I'm just going to twist the seat in a little bit. And then from there you just go back around and do the final tightening up before you put these seats into position. So since I just got done working on the back, I'll work on the back one more time. And then from there, you got 4 bolts left to work with and then you're done. But again, you just throw those Allen keys in, final tightening up. There you go. Now that the slider is completely secure, I can take this and push it back. Guys, please be careful with that though. Make sure that you have a slider that's actually working. When we worked Felicia's car the first time, the issue we ran into is her slider actually didn't want to go anywhere. And that caused a whole bunch of problems with actually trying to get to these bolts. So make sure that your sliders are actually perfectly secure and accessible. That way you don't run into the problems that we ran into with hers. I do believe that that should just about do it. All right, now that it's all secure, we just have to transfer it back into the car. Now, again, be careful not to scratch your $6,000 paint job. But all the brackets line up exactly the way they should, as I showed you before we started this. All right. You shouldn't have any issue of clearances or issues with something not lining up, because Planet actually does a pretty good job with their matchups. It's not like other companies that shall not be named with not having proper body fitments. Insert body panel name here. But again, remember the main rule I told you guys in the very beginning: do not tighten stuff down all the way until everything is back in its place. That's in, that's in. Just gotta get to this last one. Awesome. That is securely locked in place. Great. And as promised, it's a pretty straightforward install. There was no time lapse. Altogether, this took us about, what do you say, wife? About 15 minutes total?
I think 15.
Cool. How did I access that one? I can get there. I can't get there. All right, almost done. Am I all the way up or am I all the way back? There we go. That, I don't recommend ever driving your car in this position. I have seen some people do it. It is the weirdest thing in the world. Like, you have to literally be a hobbit to make this work.
I'm still happy to get it out.
I almost broke my kneecap doing that. So I guess we can add an extra 2 minutes to install time of getting in and out of cars.
This is gonna be a long ride.
But, and as promised, a very straightforward and simple install, minus the tall people problems. But just as a reference point, let's check for ride height now. As you guys can see, like, my chin is about level with the steering wheel instead of me riding like this. I can actually drive my car like a normal human. But again, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this install was pretty helpful. Again, these brackets are from Planted and they are pre-cut for your car. So if you order a Planted bracket, you have to make sure you give them your make and model. But no, because it has the universal slots. Again, it has universal slots for the top, but the base is cut specifically for your car because every car has different trans positions, every car has different shifter positions, some cars are flat across. So it's cut specifically for your car on the base, but the slots on the top are universal for any slider or racing seat that you're supposed to have. I hope this install video was very helpful. Throw a comment, like, subscribe. Check out the Instagram page that me and Felicia run, which is carcouple_ZG, which I will put here. And if you want to, you can also follow this car build specifically at RAF G35. This car is doing pretty big things as of late. But that being said, I am Will, and that is Felicia. You can put it on yourself for a second.
No, I look bad.
Whatever. I'm Will, Felicia's behind the camera, and we will see you guys in the next one.